Hello friends, Brandy here with Falcon Healing Arts. Welcome back to my channel and to part 2 of our spiritual healing series that we're focusing on for the month of December 2024. So if you haven't watched it already, at the end of this video, it's okay to wait. So at the end of this video, go back and watch that first part, which is what is spiritual health? And I talk about why it's so important to address it as part of your holistic health. It is about being whole. Holistic means whole. And our spiritual health is a component that a lot of people miss. Now, in that first video, in part 1, I brought up something that I want to dive into much deeper today. And it's that connecting to the divine is done through the heart, not through the mind. We're very comfortable working with our bodies, working with our minds. The heart is a whole nother area that we need to become more comfortable working with. And this is the access to spirit. It's actually thoughts, habits, and beliefs that tend to keep the heart closed. So we're going to go through this today about those things that darken the heart, the things that we need to address in order for it to open again and for us to find more spiritual light in our lives. Now, I have been on a spiritual journey for quite a long time, and I mentioned that again in part 1, our last video, how my spiritual journey began and about my near-death experience, which was a major part of it. Now, at the end of the series, at the end of this month, I'm going to share where I am now, because even just the last year has changed very dramatically for me. And you're probably going to have some questions as to where my beliefs are. So I just want to share that to help motivate you, for you to search deeper, search longer, in order to find that deep peace that comes with a healthy spiritual life. So I'm simply sharing what has worked for me and my clients and what they appreciate in our holistic healing sessions together. Now, when it comes to working with the heart, to opening the heart, which again is a very common theme with holistic healing, to get to this spiritual level, I tend to pull from my knowledge and experience in classical yoga. I was very lucky to learn from a system that had deep roots. I studied the Yoga Sutra, I studied Sanskrit language. It was all a very important part of my spiritual development. So my experience of yoga went well beyond the physical postures, the breath work, and meditation, which we typically do for physical ease and for stress relief. It truly guided me through some of the darkest times of my life. So I was and still am pretty steeped in yoga philosophy. So my favorite book on this subject, in case you want to dive deeper, is The Heart of Yoga by T.K.V. Desikachar. So he is the son of Krishnamacharya, who was the teacher of many popular yoga teachers here in the West. So if you practice yoga, no doubt you have been exposed to his lineage. And this book, The Heart of Yoga, has a chapter called The Things That Darken the Heart. So that was the inspiration for this video today. I used to talk about this all the time in my yoga classes, and a lot of people found it very helpful and interesting. So these things that darken the heart, which are called kleshas or afflictions, actually prevent one from experiencing yoga. So there are a few definitions of yoga, but the main one we're interested in with holistic health is to yoke together, to bring together, and that refers to the body, heart, mind, and spirit, and breath, which holds our vital energy. So when we are caught up with these afflictions, these kleshas, then we're not able to fully access what it means to experience yoga or wholeness. And we are therefore not able to experience the deep peace, the santosha that comes from a practice. And even further than that, the reason for that peace, is a connection to the divine, a connection to our eternal nature and to our Creator. It is a huge misconception that yoga is Hindu. Certainly there are influences, but again, you don't need to believe anything in particular. But if you are open to moving deeper through this philosophy, so it is really a list of ideas and practices that have been passed down for thousands of years, we are able to have a deeper connection to the divine. And it's through this concept called Ishvara Pranidhana, which means to yield humbly to God. So we'll come back to this idea at the end here. But let's first go through these kleshas, these afflictions. And as you're listening, see if you can do so with a wide open mind and, again, heart. This is the doorway in. And if the mind is, and if you notice that your mind is feeling very confronted by any of this, that's a sign that maybe you can be journaling about this and see if you are willing to change, if you're willing to consider that this is a problem. So of the 5 kleshas, the main one is called avidya, which is misunderstanding. It's not seeing the world as it really is, being under a veil of illusion. And so avidya is this broad klesha that really encapsulates all the others. It's really hard to see that you are being deluded unless you have these other concepts to consider and bounce off of. So here in the Heart of Yoga, it actually shows that avidya is the roots of a tree. Let me find the page for you. So right here in this very well-loved book, you could see here avidya is at the base. It's at the roots, and then the branches coming up are the other 4 kleshas or afflictions. So avidya is the main one. And when we're caught up in it, we are truly captured and blocked. And this leads to a lot of suffering in our life because of that disconnection. So the next klesha or affliction is asmita, which is the ego. You're probably very familiar with the concept of the ego, the part of our personality that protects us, and so it thinks it's trying to do good, but it's really all about protecting us from what's happened in the past. So the ego can be very trauma-driven, and it may show up strongly in your life as the need to be right, or thinking that everything that happens is about you. We're caught up in ego when we are unwilling to change, when we feel that we are solid, everything is good, and not realizing that we may be part of the problem, that the way we are being, what we are doing is causing the suffering. So the ego needs to be confronted to move forward at all. Next is raga or attachment. So this is just leading with our desires, always moving toward what is pleasurable, what is familiar, focused on manifesting what you want in your life, not always letting in what you truly need. The opposite of raga is dvesa, which is aversion. So always moving away from the things that we don't like. And we tend to get caught up with this klesha as we age. When people become very set in their ways, it's usually not moving toward their attachments, but really moving away from the things that they don't like. So if you've ever been uncomfortable in a situation, if you've developed trauma from something, if you've been offended by someone or something, that can block us off from changing. And so we basically become ruled by hatred to some degree. And this makes our lives very, very small. When we don't want to go there or there, we don't want to associate with this person or this thing, then our life becomes very, very contracted. We live in a bubble. And this, again, leads to avidya, misunderstanding, delusion, and ultimately suffering. And now the final klesha is abhinivesa, which is fear. Fear is a huge one. So we could be afraid of certain things in our life. We could be afraid of change. We could be afraid of the future. We could be afraid of contagions, afraid of the unseen world. This is big when we're talking about spiritual health. Maybe you're afraid of growing old. Maybe you're afraid of being taken advantage of. All of these fears typically lead toward anxiety. So if anxiety is showing up a lot in your life, this is typically a spiritual problem. It's of not being able to trust, not knowing who or what to trust, because we realize at some point that we can't fully trust ourselves. Even when we are feeling very confident and powerful, we still cannot be fully objective, and we cannot control everything. We also realize that we can't lean on other people all the time. Other people are pretty unreliable. Peace actually comes when we realize we're not in control, but instead that we're being divinely led. We only need to be confident in our value, in our life purpose, and then give the rest to God, to Source, the universe. So now, how do you use this information to experience greater spiritual health? Mindfulness is key to moving beyond these afflictions and opening up the heart. Now, when you have all this in mind, then yoga postures, breath work, meditation do help, because you are looking for these to show up in your practice when you are super mindful. So you may be noticing that you're only attracted toward doing certain things. That's when raga shows up, the attachment, the desire. You tend to avoid the things you don't like. That's when dvesa shows up. You may feel like you're better than other people. That's when the ego shows up, or when we're just focused on looking good doing yoga. So these are classic examples that I would bring up in the past teaching this to a group yoga class. If you're practicing on your own, you'll just need to watch for yourself, be honest, journal about it, and just bringing more mindfulness to it will help you show up differently in your life. But yoga is ultimately about leaving the mat and bringing these practices out into the world. So then you'll look at how your ego, how your attachments and your aversions and fear are showing up at work, with your family, with all of your relationships. So being mindful of this is helping you lead a more intentional life. Now, we could also go much more deep into this using the yogic system. So if I am focusing on heart-opening practices, typically I am working with the chakras. So still in the system of yoga, and even though I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner too, we will be talking about that in our next video, along with shamanism. But here with heart opening, again, typically I stay within the yogic system. So even with energy healing, we're working with the chakras. So the individual energy centers in the body that have to do with our development. It has to do with our grounded physical nature connected to the earth, and then that ascending upward to open up to the divine, to spirit. So these centers tend to open at certain stages in our lives. And so working with the chakras, with energy healing, we can identify the areas that are blocked and then do practices to help open them back up, either through just projected energy healing, working with me, or prescribing certain practices to you so that you can develop them more at home. So I can help you with all of this, friend. I actually have a course called Yoga and Self-Healing Practices, which my cats are in quite a lot. So there's yoga videos in there for the physical postures, but it's based on the koshas, the layers of the self. So working with the physical, the mental, the breath and energy layer, the heart and emotions, and our spiritual nature. So the 5 koshas, we're working through all of that. And there are many practices in there that you could do by yourself to help you grow and evolve. And that is going to help you open up spiritually. So I'll have a link to that in the description below. We can also work together one-on-one, either in person or online through my holistic healing sessions. So this will be ideal for you if you have some serious personal reasons for being disconnected to spirit, either needing to move through trauma or doing major mindset work. I can definitely help you with that. So just reach out to me through email. I can answer any questions and we can book our first session. So I know, friends, I gave you a lot to think about here, a lot for you to reflect on and consider. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. Again, we have a couple more videos. I'm going to do 2 more videos, so stay tuned for that. These are published on Sundays, so make sure you are subscribed to this channel and hit the notification bell so you're notified as soon as it drops. I look forward to connecting with you again very soon, friend. Take care.